Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. This month we are doing the theme of skeletal trick or treat. And this is one of my favorite Feldenkrais tricks, which will hopefully treat us to more ease and comfort. This is what is known as the 5-line trick. I learned this from the master Feldenkrais magician named Dennis Leary. So what I'm going to do, you can kind of see I have the skeleton in the picture. And if you're not familiar with the 5 lines, you know what? Let's take this with us. So if you look, we're going to start at the bottom with the feet. And we can see that we have 2 leg lines, the feet to the knees. And if we look, we can see where the leg lines end, which is right here where it articulates or connects with the pelvis. So those are 2 of the lines. And then from the pelvis, we can move up the spine, the rib cage, the shoulder girdle, all the way to the head. So that's the 3rd line. We would call that the torso. We have legs and torsos making up 3 lines. Now the 4th line is the arm. And we can see from the hand through the elbow, up in toward the shoulder joint. And this is where we normally consider the arm ending. So that's the 4th line. And if we go to the other side, we have another arm for the 5th line. The torso, if we look at the torso, it's made up of parts. So we can see the head, and that's connected to the skeleton. And you can follow the skeleton all the way down and see how it's connected to the pelvis. So we got these 2 big bones on either end. And then in the middle, we have the rib cage. And I'm going to go around to the back because it's easier to see. Well, there goes my wire. But you can see how the ribs, that's a better view, how the ribs connect into the skeleton. And then the last part of the torso that we haven't talked about, and since we're in the back, we'll start there, is the shoulder girdle, which is made up of the scapula right here. And then if we go around to the front, we can see the clavicle or collarbone. And if we look at the whole thing, it kind of looks like a coat hanger. It kind of looks like it's hanging on top of the rib cage. So here's where the trick is. When we look at the skeleton like this, we think that, well, shoulder girdle is part of the torso. It's just hanging right on top of the rib cage. So it's part of the ribs. But we're going to use the magic of Feldenkrais to trick our thinking into thinking that this is not part of the torso, but this shoulder girdle is in fact part of the arm. Interesting, huh? And you're thinking, how does that become part of the arm? Well, here's the cool thing. The only place where the shoulder girdle articulates with the rib cage is in the front here, this little sternal notch. That's it. That's the only connection your shoulder girdle has with your ribs. And if you want, you can find that and feel that. Now, where does the shoulder girdle connect to the arm? Well, let's look over here. And it connects here. You could see that joint here, but there's 2 other connections. There's a connection right here. And there's a connection, whoops, right here. I can go around to the other arm, that may show better. So it connects to the rib cage in one spot, but it connects here, here, and also up through here. It connects to the arm in 3 spots. So your shoulder girdle is actually more connected to your arm than the rib cage. And you may be thinking, well, what about the scapula? The scapula has to connect someplace in the back here, doesn't it? Only seems right. The front's connected. Shouldn't the back be connected? But it's not. The scapula kind of floats over the ribs, and it can kind of slide in all these different positions. So it not being connected to the ribs is actually a really good thing, because the scapula is more available to help the movement of your arm. So what we're going to do, rather than thinking about the shoulder girdle as part of the rib cage, hanging on top of the rib cage, we are going to think about following the arm. And it's easier to see if you follow from the hand outstretched. And we're going to follow that line, and you can see that line going in to the shoulder, the scapula. And then we're going to think about this line continuing from here through the clavicle all the way in to the middle of you, which is this little notch right on top of the scapula. So this is all one straight line. And the cool thing is, if we want to turn 5 lines into 4 lines, we can think of it not only going across to the middle, but we could extend that line to the other side and all the way out the other arm. So we could make these 2 arms into one line by thinking that the arm does not stop here. The arm actually stops in the middle of you. Now, we're more than a front, we're also a back. So how does this work on the back side? How does this arm extend to the back? So we have this arm extended, and you can see how it goes into the scapula, and you'll see a little ridge toward the top of the scapula. I'm going to put the arm down so you can see. This is called the spine of the scapula. So your scapula has its own little spine right here. So that we can think of the arm connecting that and going all the way to the center of you. And this is a part of the spine that the Feldenkrais people talk about all the time. You may hear C7, and you may think, what the heck is C7? C7 is the 7th vertical vertebrae. If we count down, we get to 7. And the way you'll kind of know what C7 is it's kind of hard to tell on this skeleton, but it looks like C7 is right here. It juts out a little bit. The noteworthy thing about C7 is once you get to T1, it hooks up into the ribs. So this is kind of the last free-floating vertebrae, so to speak, in your neck. So we're thinking about this arm coming all the way from the arm through the spine of the scapula, all the way into the middle into C7. And if you want to find your own C7, what you can do is you can feel toward the back of your neck. And then if you move a little downward, you'll feel a bump. There's kind of like a little bump there. And that bump, kind of where the shower hits you, that little bump that you feel is probably C7. So as we do the lesson today, we're gonna think about C7 a little bit. So again, the magic trick is that the arm does not stop here. The arm actually goes through the clavicle in the front, the spine of the scapula in back, all the way to the notch of the sternum in front here, and to this wonderful little C7 vertebrae back here. So the arms go all the way into your middle. We're finding that bony skeletal pathway all the way to the middle.